Hi guys, this is Mrs. Harlan, and today we are going to be completing the Creating Circle Graphs from Tables assignment that you guys saw in the learning plan. We are going to be doing 2 of these problems together, and you can follow along in your PowerPoint, and then you will be able to do 2 of these on your own. Just some technical tips before we get started. Up here on your top bar, this box with a T inside can add text boxes to your slide, and this is going to be useful when labeling the pie slices on your circle graph. And then right here you can add lines, which are going to be useful for actually breaking up your circle graph. So again, you guys are going to follow along with me on questions number 1 and 2 as you watch this video, and then you will be doing numbers 3 and 4. You guys know that you can always reach out to me via email or Google Hangouts with any questions that you have about circle graphs. So a circle graph is basically a circle, and it is broken into kind of pizza slices of different sizes, and it shows which percentages of a group chose something. So in this situation here, it's what percentages of a whole group chose their favorite color to be red, blue, green, or orange. Now we use circle graphs for categorical data. So that's things like favorite colors, favorite music, favorite subject, favorite food, how many votes somebody got in a contest, things like that. So when we see a circle graph, we have to be able to break the circle into the correct size slices. Now, as long as all the math is correct, your slices should fill up the entire circle. So there should be no blank space in your circle. So if we look here, it says that red, those who chose red as their favorite color, was 25%. So we need to be able to represent 25% in this circle. Well, we know from the beginning of the year that 25% is equal to 1/4. So if you broke this circle into 4 pieces, one of those pieces represents the amount of people who like red. So I'm going to go ahead and add a line. And I'm going to start at I always like to start at the top of the circle. I think that just makes it a little bit easier. And I'm going to draw a line straight down to the center of the circle. So all of your lines are going to go towards the center. And then I'm going to draw another one going from the center over this way. And that makes about 1/4 of a circle. Of course, since we're doing it this way, it's going to be a little bit off, but that's okay. And I'm going to label that part of the circle red. So that chunk is the number or the amount of people who like red. Next is blue. So it says 50% of people like blue. Now we know from the beginning of the year that 50% is equal to 1/2. Now we don't start back at the top and go around a half. We kind of pick up where we left off, which is this radius right here, and we're going to go around halfway around the circle. So that means that I need to put a line from the center of the circle straight out. And now this bottom of the circle is about 50%. So we can go ahead and label that blue. So we have 25% and 50%. That means that this empty wedge is equal to 25% because all of these together should equal 100%. Well, we have green, which is 12.5%, and orange, which is 12.5%. And if you add those together, you get 25. So we know that we're on the right track. Now, since they are equal, we can take what's left and cut it in half. So one of these is equal to green, and the other one is equal to orange. So sometimes we can create circle graphs when we are given the percentages, and we just have to split it as best we can into its parts. It gets a little more complicated with a question like number 2, where we are given maybe the number of votes or the number of people who chose something, not the percentages. Now we know that these aren't percentages because this says number of votes. They do not have a percent sign. And if we add all of these up, they don't equal 100%. And the percentages in a circle graph, no matter what the numbers are, should always equal 100%. Now in order to make our circle graph, we have to turn each of these rows into a percent. The first step to doing that is to finding the total number of votes. And since it's a total, we do that with adding. So we're going to use Desmos, and we're going to add 10 plus 20 plus 40 plus 10, and we know that there are 80 total votes. Now we need to determine the fraction for each row. For example, 10 people voted for Tiffany out of 80 possible votes, so the fraction is 10 over 80. For Javin, 20 people voted for him out of 80 people total, so that's 20 out of 80. For Ashani, 40 people voted and there were 80 total, so that's 40 out of 80. And then for Alan, 10 people voted out of 80, so that's 10 over 80. Now we can use Desmos to find the percentages. Now typically when we do fractions, decimals, and percents, we are not allowed to use Desmos, but when we're doing circle graphs, we can. So first we turn the fraction into a decimal by dividing. So we do 10 divided by 80, and we get 0 and 125 thousandths. To turn that into a decimal, we just move the decimal point 2 places to the right, and we get 12.5%. For 20 out of 80, we just do 20 divided by 80. We get 0 and 25 hundredths, which is equal to 25%. For Ashani, 40 divided by 80 is 0 and 5 tenths, which is equal to 50%. And Alan is the same as Tiffany, so that is also 12.5%. Now that we have our percentages, it's the percentages that we're going to use to actually create the circle graph. Now we have a couple of options here, and the nice part is we don't have to start at the top. So why don't we start with something we're a little more familiar with? Let's actually start with Ashani at 50%. So we know that means to split our circle in half, because 50% is 1/2. So I'm going to draw a line down the middle, and I'm going to label one side with Ashani's name. So that's done. The next most familiar that we probably are is Javin with 25%, which is 1/4. So we are going to start from here, and if I go 1/4 of the way around the circle, I end up here. So that is going to be Javin's portion. Just like in the last example, Alan and Tiffany are both 12.5%. This blank space left over is 25% because we already have 50 and 25, which is equal to 75. And since they're equal, we can just split that pie piece in half. So we have Tiffany and we have Alan. So you guys are going to try numbers 3 and 4. You can email me with any questions that you have. Just remember, you want to find the total first. You're going to create a fraction for each row, so the tally over the total. Use Desmos to turn the fraction into a decimal. Then move the decimal point 2 places to the right to turn the decimal into a percent, and then break your circle up into the correct size slices. Now today we just talked about 50%, 25%, and 12.5%, but in circle graphs we're going to see a lot of different possibilities. So as you go through number 3 and 4, if you don't know what a 33% looks like on a circle graph, just do a quick Google search and you'll be able to find it. All right, guys, see you soon.